Welcome. I am back. Yeah, last week I decided to take a kind of pseudo day off, with the holidays, 4th of July. And yeah, I really didn't do a real podcast. Actually, instead of doing like a podcast on tech, I took that time to decide to use that more of a way to, give you an introduction, explain what the NextUp is, this whole project, how I went from becoming someone who was struggling as a tech user to creating my own blog and podcast. But yeah, the break is over. We're back to business as usual. We got some tech news out there, a lot of stuff to talk about, dealing with just Android news in general, as well as, I'm going to talk about a series that I started on my website, kind of highlighting the NexuP or the Nexus-Pixel program, the history of it, kind of trying to figure out how we got to where we are now with the Pixel phones and the beginnings. And I kind of will highlight that towards the end of the show and conclude with a deeper topic. I want to kind of talk about this balance we're trying to strike between security, privacy, and safety. But before we get all to today's topic, let's go ahead and get started with a brief introduction. I'm your host, PC747. As I said above, I'm a person who was kind of struggling with tech. I had a hard time learning how to use my iPhone 3GS, hook it up to iTunes and getting all that started. And I went from there to pick up a Motorola Droid, and it led me down a path to where I'm now writing about it, talking about it. And I'm doing it from the eyes of a person who helped guide people on how to use it through the years of the Motorola Droid up to now. But for me, I was someone that didn't understand the language that these tech users were using. And, once I finally understood it, I said, man, I want to be the person to kind of translate that language, to be that bridge, to kind of take all the stuff that's going on in the tech sphere and break it down so that the everyday user can pick it up and feel like they know what's going on and get an idea of whether or not this is something that they need to look out for as far as devices, what software is out there. And like I say, in a language that you understand, because really, with the NextUp podcast, our goal is to bring sensible tech to sensible people. Now, this podcast is posted every Friday on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and my website, thenexup.com. I also upload it to YouTube once I'm done uploading to those other platforms. Now, if you have any questions on the topics that I covered today, or if you have any topics you want me to bring up, you can leave a comment below or hit me up at PC747@thenexup.com or nexup.net. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, for Pixel users, we got a new beta. Q Beta 5 is out now. So here are a couple of highlights for the Q Beta 5 that, you can expect. Dark mode for boot animation. Now, if you're not familiar with that, basically, it's if you ever rebooted your phone, whether it be because you took an update, it was just you had a buggy app, or it's just time to reboot your phone. Basically, once you reboot your phone, you get this blinding bright light. No matter what brightness your phone is at, especially if you got your brightness set down to like the bare minimum because it's nighttime, and you go to reboot your phone, you get this bright white light as you got that logo showing that Google logo, and it's just kind of blinding. Well, if now that you can set that to dark mode, you ain't got to worry about that no more. So that is actually something that is really a big addition for me that I like that they added. Now, right now, if you test it, you're not going to be able to test that on a Pixel 1, but on a Pixel 3 XL, and I believe someone said the Pixel 2 XL, you was able to try it as well. Another thing, they're attempting to make gestures better. Now, for me, I'm going to be honest with you, Google's attempt at going with gestures, it's not working. I'm not liking it at all. Every time I've tried it, picked it up, I found myself going back to, as I say, the pill method. But they're still trying to attempt it. I'm kind of curious for those out there who are trying it out. If it's a step for you, are you liking it? Or are you like me and like, what, Google, you need to leave gestures to Apple, and you guys should just pick up, just stand with the pill method because you guys can't figure out the gesture thing. Another thing, active edge. There's like a feedback for that. So now when you kind of squeeze on the edge, this is only going to be for those with the newer Pixel phone, like the Pixel 3, Pixel 3 XL, the Pixel 2 XL, I believe had, or 2 XL had it. And I believe the Pixel 2 have it as well. But you squeeze on the side, you're able to launch Google Assistant. Well, now when you squeeze on it, you kind of get a light right there to kind of let you know it's active. This is key because there are times where you're actually squeezing on it, you don't realize you're squeezing on it. So now you kind of get a feedback to realize that I'm squeezing on it and I'm activating it. And this would mean for those of you who may have a stronger grip than you realize, you can go up there to the settings and change the grip so that you can really have to put more pressure to it to intentionally activate Google Assistant. Because I know when I first had Active Edge set up, there'd be times where I activated and I really didn't want to activate it. It just was because of the simple fact that, the edge sense was sensing that I was squeezing on it and wanting to activate it. Another feature, squeeze to talk. Same thing. When you squeeze on the sides, you will be able to activate Google Assistant and start talking. And for me, I think that's a kind of a good way a good addition to add to that. And it looks like what they're trying to do is get away from having you hold on a home button to activate Google Assistant. You're basically using the edge feature to activate it. And it makes sense. Now, if you want to see all the other features that are coming out for your Beta 5, I'm pretty sure that sites like 9 to 5 Google, as well as Android Police, going to be posting articles every day on what's new and what they found, especially XDA. I know XDA is real good about that. They dig deep through the software and just come through every little detail, find the things that they expect to see even future software builds that we're not realizing. So yeah, stay tuned to the community. If I find some stuff, I'll definitely be bringing it to you, writing about it, and definitely tweeting about it. But as we talk about this Android Q beta, well, we know that the official version of Android Q will be featured on the upcoming Google Pixel 4. Now, I'm excited about the Nexus-Pixel program. I've talked about it so many times with the primary, reason why this site was started was because I'm a big fan of the Nexus and the Pixel program, particularly the Nexus program back in the day. It would drove me to write about the history of it and, kind of me chronicling, my fanboyism of the Nexus program. So as we're coming up on a new Pixel, I was excited to kind of see more and more leaks. So Price Baba and OnLeaks have been busy this week dropping leaks for the Note 10, for the Pixel 4 XL. And right now, let's go ahead and talk about the Pixel 4 XL because it's something that I need to talk about. Now, look-wise, I am liking the images I'm seeing. For the black version, they're going to come with a white power button, something I'm really liking. I think it's kind of, reminiscent in a way of the Panda phone. Now, I know some of those who are the fans of the Panda Nexus would say that they would prefer a white version with the, black top, very similar to the Panda phone back in the day. But, the black and white style right here that I'm seeing, kind of like I would say more like an oil look, with the white power button. I'm liking that look. As far as everything we're seeing, they're not going to go edge to edge similar to what is on the Samsung or the OnePlus latest phones. They're sacrificing that for the front-facing speakers. Now, according to people testing it, that sacrifice may be in vain because the front-facing speakers are not front-firing, which, I'm going to talk about that later when I start talking about my issue with the Pixel 4. But let's go ahead and continue on talking about as far as specs-wise. There's rumors that, it's going to start at 4 gigabytes of RAM and top out at 6 gigabytes of RAM. And, let's go ahead and talk about this real quick. Now, before I go ahead and start doing my annual rant about the latest Pixel coming up, I want to go ahead and show some love for Price Baba and OnLeaks for this major drop yet again so that we can see what to expect. Now, let's talk about the Pixel 4 XL and my continued, I guess I had to say it again, my continued issue with Google. It's just that here we are yet again, a phone that's coming up, and you're topping out at 6 gigabytes of RAM, starting at 4 gigabytes of RAM. I can't believe the simple fact that you're going to start a phone that you consider a flagship at 4 gigabytes of RAM after you see the issues we're having on the current Pixel 3 XL. Personally, I have a problem with the 3 XL because of the simple fact that every time I go ahead and try to take a picture real quick, hit the double power button, it's like this delay, this lag before I can take a picture. I'm like waiting for the camera to come on. It's like it's almost faster for me to actually use the fingerprint, unlock the phone, and go into the camera app versus hitting a double power button or double tapping on the power button to actually launch the camera. And this is a testament to the lack of hardware power that Google's putting behind their phones. And you cannot consider yourself a flagship if you're this far behind on all the other flagships out there, especially when OnePlus is now starting to lap you when it comes to hardware. Look, I know you got the camera, but outside the camera, if you take that camera out, you have nothing when it's compared to any other software. It's a matter of time before OnePlus will catch up to you in the camera department. I see that actually happening soon. And if they're able to catch up to you guys in the camera department, why do you exist? As a fan of the Pixel phones, you have to wonder why they exist. They're just so far behind on what the competition is putting out there. You see where the trend is going, and you guys constantly continue to ignore the trends. Almost every flagship out there is trying to get rid of the bezel, going more glass. And look, I can understand if you said, look, we're not going to go that way because we're giving you the front-facing speakers. I think a lot of us are okay with that as long as it were front-facing speakers. Because for me, one of the things I've said I want to see continue to stay with the Pixel phones were the front-facing speakers. So I was okay with that. But if it's not front-firing, you kind of defeated the purpose. If you're not going to give us front-firing, front-facing speakers, then go ahead and get rid of it and give us the more glass. Make the phone match the trend that is going on with the flagships devices that are out. Now, I understand right now these are just information put out there that are leaks, and we have not officially used the phone. So there is a possibility that we may get the phone in hand, and all this information may be wrong. We may actually see a phone that starts with 6 gigabytes RAM and top out at 8. We may actually see front-firing speakers. But given the trend of how this information leak every year when it comes with the Pixel, especially last year where the leaks of the Pixel 3 XL was pretty much spot on, I'm almost expecting this to be right as well. And if it is, I'm going to have a tough choice to make. As much as I am a fan of the Pixel, and I've said that I probably will be in line for this thing, I have to ask the question, is it worth it? As far as the look, I'm not going to lie, I love the look of the phone. I really do. I can, again, overlook the fact that you guys didn't go edge to edge because for me, it would be close enough to consider an acceptable device. But man, especially when I look at the price for the 6 gigabytes of RAM, that phone better not be over $1,000. I'm telling you that right now. It better not be over $1,000. Not for the 6 gigabyte RAM version. Are you going to have a 32 gigabyte RAM version topping out 64 gigabyte RAM? Again, I'm almost expecting that. But man, I don't know what else to say. I'm almost like at loss of words because I could continue on ranting about the Pixel, but I got more stories and stuff I need to cover about. But yeah, I mean, as much as I'm looking forward to the Pixel 4, in a way, I'm almost not. And Google is the reason for it. I just feel like, man, I don't know what to say. I feel like they're just either arrogant or stupid. Either they're too stupid to realize what the trend is doing, and keeping up with it, or they're just so arrogant and feel like, man, we're like Apple and we can take the risk and give you subpar hardware or hardware that's not on par with all the other Android phones out there, and you guys are going to buy it because we're giving you the software that's awesome. The problem with that is that exact same software is going to be available on OnePlus because it pretty much runs a stock version of Android. So if I can get the same stock version of Android on a competitor, why I'm buying you? And see, what Apple have that is different from Google is Apple is their own platform. They're not competing with somebody else making Apple phones. If they were competing with Samsung running Apple software, or some other manufacturer running Apple software, then maybe they would have something to worry about. But they're the only ones who supply their hardware and software. It's a closed system. They're the one-stop shop to get anything Apple related. So for them, they can afford to go down that road. You guys can't, because there's a competition out there that's also running Android. And when I'm about to talk about the next phone, it really signifies how far you guys are from the competition in understanding what the trends are asking for. Now, I understand that Samsung took a steep dive as far as sales, and people are going to point to the simple fact that people are not buying phones. But I think it has more to do with the price of the phones than the hardware. People are holding on to phones longer because of how much it costs. So if you're going to do that, give people the hardware to make the phone last longer. Unless, again, you guys are being arrogant to the point you're saying, well, we're intentionally going to make these phones subpar so that you have to come and buy a phone every year. But eventually somebody's going to be like, if I got to buy a phone every year, I might look at the competition. Now, while we talking about leaks, let's go ahead and talk about Samsung Note 10 leak. So I know you Samsung fans out there, you guys got to be geeking out. In fact, you got to be looking at us Android fan or Google fan and like, yeah, buddy, so tell us how that stock Android experience working for you guys. We'll go ahead and stick with innovation over here, while you guys are sticking with the stock experience. And honestly, I really can't argue with that. As much as we talk junk about Samsung fans, talk about you guys don't get updates, you guys are always behind as far as software updates, software tweaks. As far as innovation, Samsung is willing to go so far out there to innovate, even if it risks falling on their face. And I personally appreciate that. And their fans appreciate that. Now, it's getting to the point they're charging more for it. So therefore, people are having to hold on to their phones longer. But if you're going to have to hold on to a phone longer, at least you're getting something that the hardware specs align up to last longer to make it worth it. And that's what we're seeing. So, yeah, you guys who are Samsung fans have a lot to brag about, especially the upcoming Note, as we got a chance to take a closer look at what we're expecting to see. And we're going to see two versions of it. One is going to be Note 10, which is going to be a 6.4-inch screen. The other is going to be the Note 10 Plus, which is going to be a 6.7-inch screen. And I think the bigger phone is obvious, for those that want a bigger phone, who may have bigger hands and say, look, the Note 10 is nice, but I want something even bigger than that because that's what I want. Someone like athletes, basketball players, whatever, may want a larger phone. Now, as far as the style, it's a lot more sharp, boxy looking, and that may actually turn some people off. They may feel like, I'm not quite feeling that. I want to kind of have more of a rounded edge, more, shaped differently. But I think, for most people, looking at it, I'm thinking it's still going to be a good phone. And Samsung, they're going to throw the hardware behind it. In fact, the base model alone, Google need to pay attention to this, but the base model for the Note 10 is going to start with 256 gigabytes of internal storage, with the ability to have expandable storage up to 1 terabyte with the SD card, opposed to Google, likely going to top out at 64 gigabytes. So you're looking at almost 200 gigabytes of RAM or more memory. Now, as far as price-wise, that's where the Note 10 is going to start off at around slightly above $1,100, and the Note 10 Plus will be around probably $1,250 starting off, give or take. Now, again, for the base model, Note 10, Note 10 Plus, that's a good deal. And I really do feel like this is something that's going to last. And Samsung, when they have their unboxing event, or as they call it, Unpack, they're going to be loading all kinds of tweaks and software innovation and probably throwing a video game with 2 on there. This phone is going to feel like when you go buy it, you're getting something out of it. You'll feel like, well, I may have put $1,200 on it, but at least I'm seeing where my $1,200 is going. And for a lot of people out there who are not nerds of of the Google software, who don't care about getting the latest update, which is 80%, if not 90% of Android users, they're going to be okay with it. I polled a group of people the other day just to get an idea, what software you running? Do you even know? Do you even care? And most people did not. So for majority of people, when it comes to value, this is a more valuable phone. It actually have to say, for me, it's getting harder and harder for me to sell Pixel phones to people when really when it comes to value, I feel like the Note 10 is just a better value. Or skip the Pixel phone and go at least OnePlus, where you are able to get more for your money. And as long as Google continue to play the game of not giving you what you pay for, at least what I feel like you're getting what you pay for, it's getting harder and harder for people to recommend it, outside of those who are just fans of the software in general. Now, that is talking about their flagship phones. As far as like their 3A models and 3A XL, those are going to be the phones that are more easily able to be recommended. Because as far as price, it makes sense for the hardware they're trying to put out there. Now let's go ahead and just kind of get away from talking about phones for a second. I want to talk about HBO Max. Now, yeah, this is more geared towards the cord-cutting people, the cord-cutting crowd out there. You're trying to get away from big cable. You're into a lot of these streaming packages. And you hear now that, well, Warner Brothers, now they call themselves Warner Media Group, which is a large conglomerate of HBO, WB, New Line Cinema, CW, and like a whole list of networks that they now own, are going to be combined into what they're considering their version of the Netflix killer. So Netflix, a couple years ago, we know they did it big. They brought us pretty much cord cutters a way to consume a lot of content, whether it be old CW shows for those who missed it during the season, original series, movies, especially from the Disney and Warner Brothers perspective. You know, Warner Brothers feel like it's our time to shine. Finding a way to package all this together to make one big streaming package that is going to be beneficial to us financially. With more and more people cutting the cord and getting away from big cable, we got to find a way to make money off of these guys. And the best way to do it is by, well, let's keep it real, charging people money for consuming content monthly. And by doing so, pretty much you're making it another version of a cable package. Now, for those who may be interested in this, you know, like, all right, what am I getting, you know, for this large content that they would now be calling HBO Max? Well, first, they removed some content from Netflix so that it can be exclusive to them. Those who are fans of the TV show Friends back in the day, well, you'll no longer be able to go to Netflix to get to watch that. You have to go to HBO Max. Same thing for the CW shows. So if you're someone who don't have time to catch up with all your CW shows, or you like to go back and watch it later, and you go to Netflix for that, well, no longer. You have to turn to HBO Max for that. And then they also have their other content, HBO, you know, DC, their movies, New Line Cinema, networks such as Boomerang, CNN, TNT, TBS, Toonami, Adult Swim. This is just a number of things that they own, you know, and they're going to package this all together to a content where, yeah, you can consume everything. And the question is it worth it for you as a consumer of media? Is this something that is an attractive offer for you to have one place to be able to experience all this content? And to me, I say, yes, it is, but I think there needs to be a strategy for this. Now, again, we know that these big cable companies are trying to adapt to us cord cutters. As far as they're looking at it, we've been taking money out their pockets, moving away from big cable and going to little business streaming. So now they're trying to adapt. And now they're making their own little packages out there. And when you look at it and you add it all together, we've already said that this will happen. That we will eventually get to a point where these companies will make it more expensive to be a cord cutter than it was if you was a expanded cable subscriber. And we're at that point now where you look at Warner Brothers, not the only one doing it. You got Netflix now. Disney got their thing. Everybody is trying to not only take down the big boys in Netflix, but try to have their own network or series of content for those who are wanting to stream. And if you add all those streaming packages up together and you look at your bill, including the price that you pay for internet, you're spending more than you would have if you would stay with expanded cable. And for you who may be interested in looking at some content on one or each of these streaming services, you got to find ways around this. Now, real quick before I go over strategy that may help or benefit you, they wanted to go out there and say in their news conference that if you're subscribed to DC Universe or HBO, this is not going to affect you. They're not going to pull it and force you onto their network. At least that's what they say. Now, I wonder if when time to come, if they will kind of change on that stance, if they try to start pushing more of their content away from each of those and start moving it towards the HBO Max to force people towards there. And I actually got a feeling that that may happen. As I subscribe to DC Universe, I've said I went there because, I like the fact they have a lot of the DC movies and all that stuff there. Plus, I was testing it out just for the simple fact of having it so I can write about it. I wouldn't be surprised if I start seeing, them holding off on a lot of their movies, like the newer movies such as Justice League and Batman v Superman, all that stuff that did not make its way to DC Universe yet. And they start funneling more and more of their movies towards HBO Max to pretty much make DC Universe almost, like a watered down version of HBO Max, where if you want to see the movies and you want to see something new, you got to go there to experience it. Same will be with a lot of their content or other places, where if you want to experience some of the new content, you have to go over there to HBO Max. Now, here's my strategy to that, because again, as you have more and more of these networks doing this thing, a lot of people, they love Netflix for not just the original series, but the movies they're putting out there, and some of the content. Well, you're starting to see more and more movies and content move away from that, and you're now going to have to rely on Netflix mainly for original content. And they do put out some good original content, but I think it's getting to a point now where we got to strategize on how to make it work for us. And with more and more of these networks out there trying to do the streaming services, you're going to find a way to, maybe break it down where you say maybe for these 2 months, I will be a subscriber of Netflix. And then after that, cancel Netflix and maybe do the next service. And in those 2 months, you're just going to have to choose what shows you like. And make sure you focus on that and do the same for each one of them. And maybe for you, that'll be the best way that you can still experience that and not go broke trying to have all these services, because, each company is trying to have their own thing. Either that or let's be 100. Now, a lot of us, we know the deal. When it comes to Netflix, we share our password with friends and family members to, have, as you say, multiple accounts or multiple people watching it. Now, what you can do is say, well, I pick up Netflix, you pick up this one, and you pick up that one, and, we do what we do. We all share the username and password, so we all can win. Either that, or for the person that is, the primary purchaser or supplier of the platform that we stream, especially if, let's say, you're a parent and you're, providing this for your kids and other family members, you may say, okay, this is going to be the 2 months that we're going to be on Netflix. And after these 2 months, we're going to move to this, and this move to that. So that everybody in the household is understanding that, look, if you got something on Netflix you want to see, you better check it out in the next 2 months, because after that, we moving on. Because that's the only way I can really think of a way to take advantage legally of where you can enjoy the content you want and not go broke. Because, you should not go broke trying to make these guys rich. Because, they're feeling like you took money out their pocket when you decided to cut the cord and go streaming. And the purpose of you cutting the cord, because you wanted to put more money in your pocket. And we don't want to defeat the purpose of that by finding a way to put more money in their pockets, because we're subscribing to all of their streaming services and platforms they're putting out there. All right, so let's real quick as we move to my very final topic. But before we get there, I want to kind of talk about the Nexus-Pixel history. I'm currently writing about that now on my website, neXup.com. I'm kind of chronicling the years of what led us up to the Pixel phones. And right now, I did the first 4 phones: the Nexus 1, the Nexus S, the Galaxy Nexus, and ended with the Nexus 4. And and I want to talk about, kind of what I learned from just going through those first 4 Nexus phones. Now, when I first started, especially I started writing about the Nexus 1, I kind of got a wake-up call, because I've always held the Nexus 1 as this phone, like, this is the phone that Google need to reach to, need to get back to, and need to, focus on being like, because I always thought this phone was the best phone they ever made, and at least for the period. And I didn't realize that it was plagued with bugs, issues such as 3G connectivity, Wi-Fi issues, and even touchscreen problems. And looking at that, I'm like, wow, I didn't realize that, people had that issue. And having a Motorola Nexus at the time, I was thinking, man, the Nexus 1, and you look at the specs, was a bigger beast, a better phone to possibly have. But Now I'm kind of glad I stuck with the Motorola Nexus. I'm not Motorola Nexus, the Motorola Droid. I still was able to root, still was able to enjoy it. It was a part of a much larger community of people who was using the phone. Now, as I continue to look at a number of things, as we talk about what the first 4 Nexus really brought to there, as much as I look at what Google may have been trying to do, and I talk about some of the shortcomings they may have had with the Nexus program in general. Looking at the Nexus 1, they was kind of first to looking at an idea of changing the way you buy phones. And you look at where we were with all the other Nexus, like the Galaxy Nexus, as much as we talk about it being one of the worst Nexus for some people because of the LTE issues it had. But you look at what it brought to really technology in general. They were one of the first to Face ID. As you start to see, I say Face ID, but Face Unlock, that's what they use. You start to see Apple using Face ID, and even Google looking to go back to it. More companies getting away from the touchscreen, going back to where full facial recognition. Well, Google tried it first with Face Unlock. And then you look at the pay. I think a lot of us now are using our phones to pay for things where we can, because it's faster. It's getting better. I remember when I first started using Google Pay system, and with these NFC systems, you had to put it at the right spot, and if it wasn't, a certain distance, and you didn't have it at the right angle, it literally took you longer to pay with your phone than it would have been to whip out your credit card. But now it's getting faster. Right? As soon as I unlock my phone, it recognizes it's ready to go, and I'm able to make the payment seamlessly. And you're starting to see more companies look towards a phone payment systems, even to the fact of stores are doing that, like Chick-fil-A and Walmart. So you look at something like Google Pay, Apple Pay, and Samsung Pay, all having this idea. Well, it kind of debuted with Google Nexus with the Google Wallet. And then we look at kind of more of what Google was trying to do back then. I would say, really, when you look at the first 4 Nexus phones and where they were at compared to the competition there, I feel in a way the Google phones then were more valuable than the Pixel phones now. And this is why I say that. So the Pixel phone are meant by Google to be, they say, a more premium phone. But outside of the camera, can you really say it's that? When you look at the first 4 Nexus specs-wise, it really compared to the competition, and in some cases beating the competition. Yes, the Nexus 1 had problems with, 3G connectivity and touchscreen issue, but it was their first phone. But when you look at the hardware and what they were up against, they were beating the competition. They set the standard. You look at, like I said, the Motorola Droid. As a lot more people may own that, obviously because it was easier to obtain that than the Nexus 1. But specs-wise, the Nexus 1 beat them or doubled them in pretty much almost every category. I mean, we're talking about as far as in general, which you had compared to the competition. You was able to sit this phone at the top and say, this is where you hardware manufacturers need to get to. Now, you can't say that about the Pixel program. You cannot say about any Pixel phone right now. There's nothing about the Pixel outside of the camera that you could say, this is where you hardware manufacturers need to get to. And when you look at the camera, it's more of a software thing. Yeah, Google have figured out the software, and I give them credit. Software-wise, they have figured it out. But when it comes to hardware, it is totally different. It's like night and day. And yeah, I don't know what happened. Where the Pixel program is supposed to be the better program, in a way, just chronicling the first 4 phones, I feel like the Nexus program seemed to be doing a better job of trying to figure it out. Now, don't get me wrong. Yes, the Nexus phone had its problems. It did. The Galaxy Nexus, LTE issues. The first Galaxy, like I said, 3G connectivity issues. You look at the Nexus S, even though it was something that really inspired people to start picking up the Nexus phones, when you look at the availability, it wasn't available for enough carriers for people to enjoy it. And then you get to the Nexus 4, it was a huge step back from where the Galaxy Nexus 4. Why? Because, again, more phones were going to LTE. And this phone went back to basically 3G. And for me personally, I passed on that phone because it was the same year that Samsung released the Note 2. And when you look at the specs of the Note 2, yeah, I got a phone that was a larger screen, larger display, still able to be rooted, larger battery life, and, well, guess what? Worked on LTE. And I honestly, really, and I said, and I highlighted in that article for the Nexus 4, I don't know if Google could really have done anything to really compete with Samsung that year, because Samsung was just hot that year. They had the Samsung Galaxy S3, and people were just coming off of that and anticipating the upgrade or the successor to the Note 1. And yeah, so as soon as the Note 2 came out, people was ready for it. And Samsung played it smart, where all these other manufacturers were, quote, trying to lock phones down. They were like, at the time, let's go ahead and let people come to this device, right? They knew, they played the system right, and it benefited them to, well, what you see now. Samsung is the favorite. Now, they locked their phones down now, but they already got people already onto the bandwagon. And Google had the opportunity to come back and kind of steal that, but they didn't. Now, one thing I did notice, something I did highlight onto the Nexus 4. Now, where Samsung and Google didn't really do so well with the Galaxy Nexus, and it forced Google to rely on LG for the Nexus 4. We kind of see how that pattern continued on as they relied on LG to make more and more phones. And LG actually came out and made some really good phones for Google until we got to the Pixel phones. And that's kind of where we're at now. When you look at the Pixel phones and LG, I don't know if LG is much to blame or if Google is much to blame. And I really think it's more of Google now, because I think Google could choose what they want as far as hardware. They could decide to make the hardware what they wanted. And where before I kept blaming the manufacturer, saying, well, maybe they didn't bring this. I'm blaming Google because they have the right to choose what they want. And we're seeing that because we saw with the Pixel 3a and 3a XL, they chose Samsung for the displays, proving that they could have done that at any time. So if they have a choice to decide how their phone or how they want their phone to be built, and they're choosing to short up the devices, not giving us the hardware that we should expect and demand for the price that we're paying, yeah, I really still feel that as far as the Pixel program goes, for right now, it is far below where I feel the Nexus program was back in the day. Because yes, the Nexus program had its issue, at least for the first 4 phones, but you could say that it was forward thinking, especially look at the Nexus 4. We talk about that being the less of the Nexus, but the glass back design, wireless charging, come on. Now we see more phones do that. And you could actually look to the Nexus phones as doing what they're supposed to do, inspiring the market. It was an inspiration. It was something worth buying into because they did add something to it that made it worth talking about. And I don't feel that is the case anymore with the Pixel phones. Yes, they get more eyes to the Pixel phones because of their advertising it and the way they're pushing it and making the camera the focus, which is smart. That's pretty much the one thing they have highlighting what they have over everybody else is their camera and beating everybody, even the competition, even the iPhone. But at this day and age, especially now that you're offering a cheaper version of the Google phones, like the Pixel 3a and something like that, what's to keep someone from saying, let me just buy an older Pixel phone and use that for the camera and buy a real phone for being a phone? If I'm going someplace I need a good camera, I'll bust out my Pixel. But for everything else where, yeah, I'm okay with what I have, I can take decent enough pictures, I may buy or save my money for a phone worth buying. And yeah, personally, I'm at that crossroad right now. As we're coming up on the next Pixel, and I'm having to make the decision, is it worth me spending my hard-earned money on the Pixel 4 XL when you look at what the competition is bringing at even either a cheaper price or as far as better overall, especially when we continue to look at technology continue to expand. We're seeing Samsung attempt to do more and more, even like I said, to the point of falling on their faces. What people can say with the Samsung Galaxy Fold, they had a moment where they did fell on their face. But you know what? They're trying. And for me, I'm okay with that versus what I feel like Google is doing by not trying. By just throwing something out there and not giving a care whether or not it's acceptable as far as the hardware game. And yeah, looking back, we got the next couple Nexus that we'll bring this week, but we had the first 4 Nexus phones for Google. I think, Overall, you had a mixed bag of success, ideas that just was ahead of its time. But I think in the grand scheme of things, you look at where we are at as far as what Google was trying to do then, they had their mind and their heart was in a better focus than what it is now, I think. But let's go ahead and go to my final topic, and I think something that's more in line with, on the minds of a lot of people now that we're moving to technology. So what kind of sparked this whole discussion was, so I read an article a couple weeks back, and it was by Android Police, and it was on the Trump administration looking to ban end-to-end encryption. Now, this is not a political debate. And I've always said this show is not, ever meant to go anywhere as far as politics, religion, or anything like that. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up, because I think a lot of people kind of have this debate when it comes to technology. We're constantly battling trying to secure our devices, protect our privacy, but we all want safety. And there's this struggle trying to figure out, where does line need to be drawn? When it comes to security, it's important to a lot of us because our lives are on this phone. Accounts. Man, how many of us use our phones for paying for stuff? I just talked about Google Pay and Android Pay. Our credit cards are on our phones. We buy, we sell on phones through Amazon, eBay, and a number of other places. Photos of our houses, our possessions, our families, friends, all there. We track our health, our fitness. We look up health concerns. There is just so much that we do on our phones now because they are pretty much miniature computers that we take on the go. We do almost everything. We watch movies. Our lives could pretty much be said are on our phones. Easily. And really, we're not wanting that information to get out to anyone, especially not for it to be broadcast to the world. Or in the hands of some hacker who wanted to take that and leverage that information against us. So for a lot of us, we demand security. As far as privacy, a lot of us want to be left alone. We want our lives to be kept private. Not all of us want to be in the spotlight. We're not all looking to be an athlete, an actor, whatever. Some of us just want to be left alone. We want to enjoy our lives, go to work, and enjoy a family, and that's it. We're not trying to see our information sold to some third world country where, they're taking our information and making a buck off of it. Especially when the companies that are doing that are the ones we trust, are the ones who we're giving our money to. We're spending thousands of dollars to. So we demand those companies keep our information private. Then you think about safety. None of us want another 9/11. For those that remember that day, not to be cliche, but it really did change everything, especially for a lot of people. On that day, especially after, many people struggle to be able to turn the TV back on, to go back outside, that long, get on the airplane. It took years and years to get us to the point that we're able to live our life again. Where now 9/11 is a trivia question for a number of people. It's a history lesson. But there are a lot of people, their lives would change forever on that day. And sadly, they're struggling to pick up the pieces, and still are, despite it being so long ago. So as we get to a point, with that, we demand that our government keep us safe. That's pretty much what people say we're paying our taxes for. We want to be kept safe. But this is where we get into this crossroad, as far as government. Well, if we were to be honest, we're not, government is big. And because it's big, it's made up of a number of individuals. And there are a lot of people, I believe, that are in the government that are trying to make our lives better, that do have concern for their constituents and really care about them and really trying to do what they can to make a difference. But if we are to be honest, there are a number of them out there who are looking out to themselves, and they hide that under looking after you. They say they got this policy that's good for you, when the reality is it's really good for them. And it's really not good for you at all. They could care less about you. It's about who they can make the most money off of. Which, company is going to put the most money in their pocket. Who is going to support their campaign. And they're willing to sell out your freedoms for that. Because they have an agenda for that. Yes, there are people there, and we all know that they're in office looking after themselves. And because we know that, we're at war trying to figure out where we draw this line between security, privacy, and safety. Because you got to ask the question, are we going to allow a few people's rights to be violated for the greater good? And if you decide to go down that right and say, yes, that's what we want to do, then whose rights? And how do you determine that? Are you going to decide that based on race, status, creed, religion? Are we going to say anybody that look kind of Middle Eastern, we're going to be okay with discriminating against? Or anyone that look a certain color? Or anyone that don't fit in this class? If you make less than this amount of money, you're okay to be treated indifferent. Are we going to go down that road? And then you got to ask the question, where do we stop? Right? If right now we say, well, okay, we're okay with discriminating against Middle Eastern or someone who look this way, where does it stop? Where is it going to continue on till everybody's discriminated against? And that's what some people say, well, you know what? If we allow one person's rights to be violated, then we're pretty much allowing everyone's rights to be violated. So all rights are to be protected. And that is the freedom that comes with being a part of this great nation. There are a lot of people who fight for that. But then we got to be honest. We do realize that there are people who take advantage of those rights and freedoms to do harm to others. And in reality, when you look at that, it's like, how do you explain to a grieving family that we could have prevented that, but we didn't want to? Or I ain't gonna say didn't want to, but we chose not to because we felt rights and freedoms were more important than safety. See, these are real life questions that we all battle when we look into technology and life. And when you look at things from a different person's angle, especially those who are coming at it from a good place, you can't necessarily say this person wrong for feeling a certain way. If you're someone who lost a family member because some terrorists used technology to cause a massive, attack, and it could have been prevented if, we allowed the government to act on the lead, do you fault them for feeling like, man, you know what? I don't like what we're doing with the security thing? Or for those of us who feel like, well, as much as we understand how you feel about allowing our securities to be dropped for government, well, we don't trust the government because you have so many people in politics and government who are really not concerned about us or who have used their political power to do ill will to people. And for people like that, can you really blame them? Or how about the people that say, I did nothing wrong. I get up every day, I go to work, I pay my bills, I take care of my family, I go to church for those that go to church, or I just be a part of my club. Whatever I do, I'm an American citizen, and I don't do anything to anyone. So why should my rights be violated? Why should my privacy be violated? I didn't do anything to deserve it. If this is supposed to be the freedom that I've earned, that is a right of being an American citizen, then why should I have to give those up because one person over there decided to do wrong or decided to do harm to people? Especially when you look at now that we don't trust government, businesses, and people. Like I said, I already talked to you why some people don't feel comfortable with government, but you look at the businesses, who own your information and are doing things with it that they shouldn't be. They have information on their servers about you, and they're taking that information and purposely selling it to third-party companies because they can make an extra buck. And when you have that going on, you have a lot of people that are caught in the middle, and they say, look, I understand that, yeah, we got to deal with the thing with security. With safety and we got to deal with terrorism. But I didn't do anything wrong, and I'm not giving up my rights. Period. I'm not giving up my rights to the government. I'm not letting a business look into my information. I'm not giving up my privacy. And I know you may think it's selfish, but I didn't do anything to deserve, my rights being violated. And right now, with companies out there taking my credit and my information and selling it, I don't think my life should be turned upside down because we're worried about one terrorist. We're worried about one person doing something wrong. And really, would this person have that mindset? You can't blame them because honestly, I have that mindset. I'm not wanting to give up my rights and freedoms because of one person. But at the same time, I do understand that there are people out there trying to do something about continue to make sure we never have another 9/11 ever again. And it requires a lot of hard work to do so. But here's the big deal, and the big problem that's going to continue to be the reason why we would never get to solve, I don't think, is because we continue to have a mistrust for government and businesses to do the right thing. And as long as you continue to have that, we're going to always have this issue with how do we solve or provide the correct solution to being able to have privacy, security, and being safe. And that actually brings up the point, is that something that we ever will be able to have? As long as we continue to have mistrust for people in government, will we ever be able to find a perfect bridge between all three of them without taking away from one of them? Because in order to have true safety, some may argue, well, you may have to give up privacy and security. Or in order to have privacy and security, you may have to give up some safety. And as long as that's the case, and that is something we got to balance and we have to struggle with, that is something a lot of people will wrestle with, especially, like I said, if you're someone who have been affected by a tragedy. You may lean totally different than someone who hasn't. And I'm curious for you out there who also struggle with this. What are your thoughts on that? What do you feel about privacy, safety, and security? What rights should we be required to give up some rights? Or should we just trust that people in general are good and we will eventually weed out those that are bad? Anyway, that's today's show. Thank you for joining me in another The NextUp podcast. Leave a comment below on thoughts on the topics covered today. And hey, if you got some topic ideas that you want me to cover, feel free to hit me up on the comments below or pc747 at thenexup.net. Have a great week. I'm out.